Being a soldier is a shit job in my opinion. I was a Navy corpsman, which is the medical arm of the Navy. If a Marine or sailor gets hurt, we are there to help. I could compare it to being a nurse EMT in prison, except we're allowed to smoke and drink, and the food is better. Well, sometimes. I always get thanked for my service, but honestly, I didn't do it for you. I did it for my now ex-wife and 2 daughters. I still wonder what I would have done had I not attempted to be a family man. Now I only get to see them on the weekends. I also get to watch their stepdad and their bitch mother raise them to be complete brats. I'll be honest, I think about suicide quite a bit, but maybe my will to live is so strong it even keeps me safe for myself. That's probably why I survived what happened. I would guess what I'm about to tell you is classified on some level, but nobody officially told me not to talk about it. You see, the United States military likes to talk a lot of noise about honor and duty and how much they love us. But to tell you the truth, they value us about as much as Ford values crash test dummies. We are the ones who have to take the blame and the bullets when the U.S. government fucks something up intentionally or otherwise. But if Snowden has a fucking Twitter account, I'm pretty sure I can get away with a little confession on no sleep without incurring Chelsea Manning's government wrath, as if I give a shit at this point. I was stationed in Kandahar, a nice little blazing hot shithole in Afghanistan. If you're wondering what fighting the Taliban is like, it sucks. They don't make themselves as available for shootouts as much as they used to. They have actually gotten fairly good at hiding in plain sight these days, making our job all the more shitty. Say goodbye to action and adventure. Say hello to cooking alive in a Humvee and waiting to get blown up into bite-sized chunks by roadside bombs any minute. Oh, and I forgot to mention, no potty breaks. Sure, I got to kick a few doors, patch up a few guys with bullet wounds. I even handled a severe burn victim once. But the rush wore off quickly, and I just started to genuinely wonder what we were doing here. I stayed sane by enjoying the little things in life. I went for long walks and runs around the base, watched movies, looked forward to dinner, and got drunk whenever it was deemed acceptable to do so. I find it ironic that what scared me the most out of everything that I experienced as a soldier actually happened on base. It was about 1,200 hours to use civilians. That's noon. I had just finished lunch and intended to do some serious jacking off, a very common pastime in the military. I had a front row seat the first time it happened. He came out of the shitter completely naked and screaming like Mel Gibson in Braveheart. He was a little dude, no more than 5'3". He shoved aside anyone who got in his way and jumped on some poor bastard that was sitting there eating his lunch. He started eating his face, and he didn't take little nibbles either. He ended up seriously disfiguring this fucking guy. I know because I treated the bite wounds and subsequently infection that came later. It took about 6 people to get that crazy fucker off of him. They handled it the same way they did with the incident that happened in Florida, where someone did something similar to a homeless guy. This was about 2 years before all that, and this time they blamed it on cocaine for causing the guy to go insane like that. I didn't buy it. First of all, this particular base, I'm going to keep the name to myself in hopes of staying anonymous, was like a fucking Nazi Germany as far as drugs were concerned. And I do get down occasionally, so I would have known about it if somebody had some coke. Second, I knew the guy that went nuts, Dennis. I think his name was. He was a fucking straight-laced dork who had probably never even seen drugs since middle school health class. We might have been able to forget about it in some degree if it hadn't happened again. I wasn't there for this one, but apparently the next day they found some Marine in a similar nude and deranged state beating the shit out of one of the vending machines. He apparently kept up his self-declared war on Pepsi for about an hour before some bright star had the presence of mind to sneak up behind the guy and stick him with a sedative. It was about this time me and several other people realized something very foul was going on here. I was sitting outside having a few beers with some of the Marines that night when we all finally got up the balls to talk about it. The first one to bring it up, we'll call him Greg, was a good friend of mine. He's pretty old for active duty Marine, 43 I think. He reminded me a lot of Clint Eastwood in Heartbreak Ridge. So what do you guys think going on with these people getting naked, going batshit crazy? One of the Marines did a bad impression of Rick James and said, "Cocaine is a hell of a drug." This sparked some laughs from the group, but Greg gave him the stink eye. Everybody knows there's no coke here, dumbass. What did they do? Buy it off a camel? I've got my own theory if you potato heads are interested. We all went silent. You could hear a pin drop. Greg took in a breath and continued. In the 60s, they did this shit called MK Ultra. The company men, military slang for CIA, were experimenting with all sorts of drugs and mind control shit. They gave LSD to a whole bunch of guys and never even told them. Maybe this is something like that. I've been having trouble sleeping recently. Anyone else? One of the other Marines broke the silence and said, "You can't sleep because your old ass drinks too much coffee, Greg." Everyone laughed and they got back to talking about cars or whatever the hot topic was. Idiots. Me and Greg and a few others decided to quit eating the food from the chow hall, and the little McDonald's on base started getting a lot of business. When that wasn't available, we ate MREs. If you think our CO might have wondered what was going on, he didn't, because we started to notice all of the officers were doing it also. We even stopped drinking the water, which wasn't hard for me because I'm a soda addict. Life got kind of back to normal, but we knew this fuckery wasn't over, and our horrible suspicions were proved correct about a week later. But this time, I didn't have the luxury of being a shocked bystander. I woke up to Greg banging on my door. It was very late. I don't know what time it was. I put my head through a cracked door and asked, "What the fuck, man? What's going on?" Greg looked scared shitless. And for a 40-something Marine who had no doubt seen more shit than anyone on the base, that meant seriously bad news. "It's happening again. This time, there's 15 of them. Come look." We quietly made our way to the window of the small building, and sure enough, there was about 15 people running around the base naked and screaming. I saw lights start going on in every building, and I knew there was more. Then I heard a door slam open behind me. I had known the guy who came out for almost about a year now, but looking into his eyes, he didn't know me. We call him Brody because he looked like that big black guy who does the YouTube videos, except bigger. Easily 7 foot, Brody was a corpsman also, but from the way he was built, everyone wondered why he didn't go out for special forces. Apparently, he was very religious and didn't like the idea of killing people. He wasn't religious tonight, though. Brody charged me first, looking back on it. I should have been grateful I didn't get mauled like the guy I had saw in the chow hall. But getting your ass beat by a guy that size can kill you. I didn't know anyone could hit as hard as he was hitting me. I was lucky. There was mostly body shots. I'd probably be toothless by now, but he broke 3 of my ribs, both of my legs, and dislocated my shoulder before Greg got him off of me long enough for me to crawl away. Greg is a true fucking hero in my book. He ended up knocking Brody out with a fire extinguisher, and we locked ourselves in the room until we heard a knock on the door and our CO's voice telling us it was safe. From what I later heard, whatever it was had affected about 20% of the enlisted men on our base that night. 12 people died. Help had to be called from one of the closest neighbors. To my complete and utter disbelief, the entire incident was written up as a out-of-control party. Sure, it was a party. Mickey Mouse is the president and cars run on piss, see? Can I do it too? I ended up getting a medical discharge. I still talk to Greg. We live in the same city now. He has tried to get some closure on the incident, but the Navy refuses to say anything about it or even pay us to keep quiet. We can't find out any articles on the incident anywhere. I'm with Greg on his conclusion that we were victims of some godless experience. I would hope they didn't plan it out that way, but who the fuck knows? So support your troops, guys. Regardless of your political fetish, if you have a loved one on deployment, send him stuff and call them whenever you can. They do some fucked up shit to soldiers. Uncle Sam is a sick bastard.